Who that? How you guys doing? This is your host Devin Johnson, and welcome to the Second Line Sports Network. Today, I'm going to be covering the Saints versus Green Bay Packers game that came on yesterday, and I must say, only the Saints. Entering this game, this was a very exciting matchup. The Saints boasted a 2-0 record, while the Packers were 1-1. The Saints had a top five defense going into this game, while the Packers, led by newly crowned quarterback Jordan Love, led the league in both passing touchdowns and passer rating. Just a quick assessment of the game keys. I would say that the Saints had to focus on improving their offense. Through 2 weeks, Derek Carr, the new leader of our squad, has shown some promise, but we've generally lacked downfield threat ability. We haven't been as explosive as we imagined, and we've had trouble getting the ball to Michael Thomas and running the ball in particular. So we definitely look to improve those aspects. Unfortunately, as we all know, Derek Carr was injured in this game, but we will cover that. The Packers, on the other end, they have done okay. They had a game against the Bears, but this was the first test for Jordan Love, so I definitely expected for our defense to be good. Through the first half, we exceeded those expectations completely. We were smothering. We forced a punt, a turnover on downs, and we also had a punt return for a touchdown. On the other end, on the offensive side of the ball, the Saints in their very first drive went on a three and out. Derek Carr was brutally sacked, and we will go on to score on our next drive, scoring a touchdown by throwing it to Jimmy Graham. Surprisingly, uh, I would say that all in all, throughout the first half, the Saints honestly dominated this game. Offensively, we didn't look that sharp. We did what I felt we had to do. We still weren't quite cohesive and explosive. We had some key sacks given up, particularly from the inside. Kenny Clark had got some pressure. Rashawn Gary had an outstanding game on both the left and right sides of the ball, working on Trevor Penning and Ryan Ramchick. And we weren't really able to get the ball, get the ground running in terms of the run game. But all in all, I would say we did what we had to do. We raced out to a 17-0 lead at the half, which was the most that we had scored up until that point, and was equally impressive considering that only one of those scores came through an actual offensive touchdown. So in the first half, things that dominated. We stuck to our game plan. The Packers, on the other hand, had a lot to show. They were without their starting wide receiver, Christian Watson. They were also without their starting running back, Aaron Jones. But the Saints had their injuries as well. We missed our starting safety, Marcus May, and we also were missing our second starting cornerback, Paulson Adebo, which were pretty big losses. I would say that the replacements for both Adebo and May played extremely well. We had to start safety Jordan Howden from Minnesota, who I would say filled in pretty admirably, not really giving up any big plays, playing pretty, I would say, safe coverage assignments and communicating well. And Debo, we opted to actually put Alante Taylor in the slot, and we worked with Isaac Yadam on the outside. These guys will have an outstanding game, both combining for nine passes defensed overall. Alante Taylor, in particular, was extremely dominant covering the slot as he saved a multitude of touchdowns. He played very clean football. He showed grit in the slot, blitzing on some plays, just playing very physical and providing much needed energy to the defense. On offense, in the first half, we mainly relied on Chris Olave. But definitely like to see us stay more committed to the running game. That was as we used Taysom Hill a little bit. We used Tony Jones Jr. and we actually saw the debut of Kendre Miller, who got a few nice carries. So that was promising to see. But all in all, we're still not necessarily a running team. And to be quite honest, I would say we're a team without identity. And going into our next game in Tampa Bay, the Saints have to make a clear delineation of who we are going to be offensively. Talent wise, I would say between the trio of Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Rashid Shaheed, we have one of the better receiving trios in the league. Now, how we're choosing to utilize them is kind of questionable. In our game against Green Bay, we opted to go pretty conservative, which is understandable considering the fairly lackluster O line play. But like to see a little bit more risk being taken in terms of using Rashid Shaheed and Olave, who have, when given the opportunity, shown that they're more than capable. Chris Olave, by the way, has had two of the most spectacular catches that I've seen thus far this season. So I'm extremely excited for that. But in terms of our game plan, it wasn't for our defense. I would say in the first half, I really didn't see anything that was too much to be desired. Notably, though, in our very last possession offensively, we drove the field over 80 yards, which was pretty impressive, but it didn't amount in the touchdown. So I would say that we definitely need to focus on our red zone. So far, I haven't seen much of Jawan Johnson. We have been trying to utilize Michael Thomas. I would say he's pretty good, but he hasn't been up to incorporating some more read options. Looking at Juwan Johnson more, Jimmy Graham, who scored our first touchdown, would be very vital, to use to score in the red zone. In the red zone, you just have to score. It's already hard to go the distance of the field, and there's almost nothing more demoralizing in football than coming up short, where 3 points is acceptable, but for us, we consistently have to settle for 3 points or nothing at all. So I would like to see us use our red zone threats more. I would like to, I would like to see us be consistent. I don't think we're consistent in our play calling schemes yet, and it's completely understandable with us adjusting to Derek Carr, adjusting to the return of Michael Thomas. So it's something that it's completely warranted. In the second half, I would say the Saints came out completely swinging. We actually got a touchdown on the very first um, drive, on the very first defensive drive. It was extremely exciting to watch. The interception was from newly acquired safety Lonnie Johnson. They got filling in, so that was pretty promising. The Saints actually, up until that point, held the Packers to no touchdowns, definitely, and under 100 yards passing. So that was extremely encouraging. The drive following that was actually the drive where Derek Carr was injured, unfortunately, again due to our line not quite holding up. He took a brutal sack. He was slammed, and he was ruled with a shoulder injury. Now, at this point, a lot of people were still confident in the game, myself included. All we needed was at least one score, a stop, anything. We only had about that occurred with about 10 minutes left in the third quarter, and we were gonna ride it out with Jameis. Now, one thing that I noted once Jameis entered was that the already conservative play calling became even more conservative. Not only that, there seemed to be a lot of miscommunication with what was going on. Saw some guys running routes in the same area. You saw some more penalties, which we were pretty devoid of in the first half. And you just saw a lot more, discombobulation between the team. So honestly, going forward, we will see what the plan is for Jameis at quarterback. I still firmly believe that, truly and honestly, Dennis Allen doesn't have full faith in Jameis. But granted, the circumstances, it's almost like we have to, the report has officially came out and it says that Derek Carr is week to week, so we can be pretty hopeful that his return shouldn't be, too extended. But in case that it is, I would definitely be comfortable with James. Um, in the third quarter, we were unable to score at all. Granted that we forced two consecutive punts after getting the interception, um, and also dominant performances by guys who were, replacements. Isaac Yiadom stepped up big time in the second half. He had two critical pass breakups. Alontae Taylor, as I mentioned earlier, was continuously dominant, and Lattimore was himself. I will note that we do need an uptick in production from our interior pass rushers. I would like to see more utilization from Brian Bresee, who early in the game flashed. Definitely, he had a batted ball that prevented a big play. He's been, pretty active in the snaps that he's getting, I would say. And he gives us, an incredible blend of power, size, just athleticism, run stopping, and pass rushing ability from the defensive tackle position that we haven't quite seen. And I did take note that Jordan Love had a great deal of time in the pocket. When you look at the disparity between our pressures and sacks and the Packers, Derek Carr was sacked 4 times. Surprisingly, Jordan Love was only sacked once, and that came by way of Alontae Taylor. So the D line definitely has an improvement in terms of pressures. Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan have been good in recent weeks, but it's pretty hard for guys to single-handedly carry, a D line in terms of pass rush. So hopefully, some of these new guys, Ethan Shepard, Kalen Sanders, Brian Bresee. Hopefully, we see some more usage from Isaiah Foskey. I saw him get a few snaps last night. We get some more play out of those guys to help us on that end, because our defense is honestly carried by our secondary. Our secondary has been absolutely lights out. We've been able to stick to almost strictly playing man. And to say that we play man so well, considering that our pass rush hasn't been that consistent, is really a testament, to how good our scheme and our guys are. I would say that, right now we definitely probably have a top 3 to 5 secondary. So that's something that we can hang our hats on. And you saw it in the Green Bay game. It really took a very long time for the Packers to uncork their passing game. If you go just based off of the stats, let me see here. The Packers had 252 passing yards, and almost 200 of those yards strictly came in the fourth quarter. And, a lot of people are giving attention to the defense for this loss and, well, how did we give up 18 points in the quarter? How is it that we let this happen? In all honesty, you really have to take in consideration the time of possession, the amount of, the total time that they were on the field. To play smothering defense in the NFL is extremely difficult. To play smothering defense for 4 quarters when your offense isn't producing, is literally going 3 and out consecutively, is almost impossible. So I do give a little bit of leeway to the Saints secondary and defense, just because those guys were tired. Those guys were extremely tired. They didn't get much rest, and offensively, we just needed more of a punch. If you look at it conversely, the offense did not score for essentially 30 plus minutes. We didn't score for an entire half. And that's just unacceptable. Granted, the circumstances, we forced punts, we had the ball in favorable spots. I will say that earlier in the game, we started some of our drives in plus territory. In the second half, we started about 60% of our, well, we only had a few, we did about 2 or 3 drives in within our own 20. So that's something to look at. We need to assess, how we attack downfield, how we drive the ball, how we manage time. Even with the our quarterback being out, there are ways to kind of acquiesce time management and ultimately just sealing the game. And that's the facet of the game that we couldn't do yesterday. We couldn't seal the game. We didn't make the proper adjustments, I would say, without Carr, and we just couldn't get it done. But look forward, this was definitely a heartbreaking loss. I will say this is one that was kind of needed, though. Um, Considering if we won this game, the Saints would have been 3-0, and I wouldn't say we would necessarily be a fluke 3-0 team, but we definitely weren't definitively dominant, if that makes sense. I felt like this would have come about maybe in later weeks with even more competent teams, but you have to be able to score in the current climate of the NFL. When you look at some of the most recent Super Bowl winning teams, there have been offensive juggernauts, the Chiefs, the Rams. All of these guys are squads that have put up, 20 points excess fairly easily. And for the Saints, it's been quite a struggle for us to get just to 20. So the offense has to be looked at. The play calling has to be looked at. Our pass protection must improve. We did. We were dealt an injury on the O line. We lost Cesar Ruiz, who just signed a 4-year contract of about, I want to say, 3 million. So that was kind of a hard loss considering we already were kind of shuffling. Andrews Pete had to fill in for left guard and James Hurst filled in for right guard. But hopefully, Cesar Ruiz is only out a week. As far as Derek Carr, there have been updates that his injury is not as severe as originally conceived. So he's being listed week to week. We will see how that plays out. Hopefully, he comes back sooner rather than later. But this definitely hurts for the continuity of the team. As you saw, as you have seen with the New York Jets, it's pretty tough to have a newly acquired guy, to have high expectations, to integrate him during the summer. And ultimately, these guys go down quick now. For the Jets, Aaron Rodgers went down immediately, essentially, and they had to scramble and readjust. But for the Saints, who have slowly been trudging along and finding their offense, this is kind of a blow in terms of getting their car, right. But I am confident that if the team improves around him, Derek Carr can get to that level pretty quickly. Derek Carr is a very talented guy. I think he's shown that in the 3 games that we've seen him. I don't think the play calling has been what it can and should be, but given what it has been, he's been serviceable. Um, this was the first game where we did not have any turnovers. This was the first game, we didn't have any picks, any fumbles. This was the first game where we did have a special teams touchdown. And this is ultimately the game that we lost. So yes, this was a very demoralizing loss, but it was one that was very teachable. So I can't say that I'm happy, but I am happy because going into next week we're facing Tampa Bay. Um, you can book it as a vengeance game if you want to. I know a lot of people are looking forward, me and myself included, to Lattimore versus Mike Evans part whatever. Hopefully, no one's ejected out the game and both guys could finish. But going into the next game against Tampa Bay, I hope that team has a clear game plan. Tampa Bay is a team that has been playing a lot better than most have anticipated. Baker Mayfield, in particular, has been well in tune with his receiving core, which is back fairly healthy. Um, Mike Evans is coming off a monster game where he had 8 receptions for 170 yards. And ultimately, the Bucs are they're competitors, so they're gonna bring it to us. We got to bring it to them. We have to. Well, I'm sorry. Some things that I would say that we should bring from this game into that game, of course, is our defensive intensity. I would love to see more guys in the trenches getting more pressure, stopping the run, because I really do that. I really do think that we have a squad that if we force the Bucks to throw the ball on us the entire game, any team for that nature, as of right now, that's not in their best interest. So if we can stop the ground game, continue to play the defensive brand of football that we've been playing, and just more fortunes on the offensive end. It's 3 weeks now. We now have to make another minor adjustment, but we are getting Alvin Kamara. So a big addition. Hopefully, AK can bring some life to the I would say completely lacking run game that, but also to the passing game as well. As Alvin Kamara is a dual threat, and he's done pretty well historically against the Buccaneers. So important game. It's going to be our second divisional game right now. We're currently 1-0, and if we win, we should sit atop the division. So um, although it was a good game by the Saints against the Packers, it was a tough loss. It was a coachable loss. There is some improvements on both ends, on the offensive end, the defensive end. There are some improvements in the coaching in terms of game management, time management, situational awareness, our personnel usage. I didn't mention this, but I would love to see more involvement from Jawan Johnson, who last year came off a breakout season. So far, I haven't heard a peep from him. And honestly, when you look on the field, you don't see him being utilized or targeted as much. So, definitely important for the coaching staff to pay attention to our guys and what they can do and when to use them. I would say, we've done a great job this year with Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave looks like he's primed to be our next number one. I can't say enough about him. And we have Michael Thomas, who I would say he's been good. He's been pretty good. Granted, everything he's been through. So, we just need to mesh. We have to settle down. We had the hot start. Um, Honestly, I would say just due to how good our defense is, they were some escape wins. But if anything, this loss was indicative of our offensive aptitude. This was not the defense. This was not us just giving up. This was the offense, not scoring, not being able to, relieve the defense, not being able to, as coaches say, step on opponents' throats. And as you've seen with the Dolphins and Broncos game, you have to bury people. You can't just leave things, open. And honestly, a 3-score lead in today's NFL isn't that safe, especially a 17-point lead. If we just had a touchdown, maybe the game would have been different. But it's just a tough loss, and it's one that hurts more. Indulge. When I actually watched it live, I definitely through even through the car injury, I was that this was one that we would take. Like there was almost no doubt in my mind. But after seeing countless miraculous Saints losses, countless games where we just find a way to let things slip out of our grasp, this was just the latest installment in an ongoing series. So hopefully this year we clean this up rather than later. I would like to see this happen now as opposed to week 15, week 16, week 17 going into the playoffs when the implications are much bigger. Granted, there were implications in this game. I don't necessarily see the Packers as a top 4 seeded team. They had a pretty competitive division. Granted that Detroit is pretty good this year, looking to impress, and the Vikings are coming off a pretty strong showing as well last year. So it's a lot of hope for the Saints, a lot of things to learn, and it's a lot of things that we can improve upon. But all in all, I can say I'm proud of them. Um, I would say we played well. We did show a lot of fight, and we just didn't finish. But I will definitely be giving my pre-review of the Bucks game this Friday. So definitely tune into that. I'm probably going to drop some short snippets, some short videos, just analyzing keys to look out for, key matchups, and ultimately talking points on just how we can my start my prediction for a dominant division run. So hopefully, we can learn from these things, and we can build, because we definitely have the team to do it. This is a capable team. This is a talented team, and we've had the talent for years, but we now have the quarterback that we feel can propel us to that next level. So prayers for Derek Carr, prayers for Cesar Ruiz, all the injured players, and we'll bounce back next week. I'll see you guys on Friday, and thank you for tuning in. Again, this is your host Devin Johnson. I thank all of you guys for tuning in to the Second Line Sports Network, and I promise I'm gonna try to be as consistent as I can with you guys. Until next time, thank you.